Hello, and welcome to another episode of Contemporary Living Live. Yes, we are live, where we provide lifestyle solutions for everyday living. We are the platform of champions, and guess what? You're a champion too, because you chose to be here with us on this Sunday. So just simply by joining us live, that makes you a champion. But seriously though, it really means a lot to us. And like I always say, right now we're in the information age and people are vying for your attention. They're trying to get you to watch this and do this. And there's so many streaming platforms out there, but you chose us. So we just want to say thank you. So now that we're here on Sunday, how are you doing? First of all, how are you doing? Now that we're here on Sunday, one of the things that Andre and I like to do is just binge out on all of our shows. So we have a number of shows that we watch. I don't know if you watch them, but one of the shows that we watch and keep up with is The Godfather of Harlem. Now, I'm not going to do any spoiler alerts, but if you are a follower or if you watch The Godfather of Harlem and that scene today between Betty Shabazz and Malcolm X, ooh, riveting. I tell you, I had the water was flowing. I could not stop the waterworks from flowing today. That was such a powerful scene. But they have, I mean, the entire episode of Godfather of Harlem today is just absolutely top notch. So I don't know if this is the last episode of the season, but if it is, I will tell you what, it did not disappoint. Okay, so let's go right into this episode's contemporary living mover and shaker. So yes, this episode's mover and shaker, we want to give a shout out to our past guest, Elmira Dr. E. Lofton. She's also known as a self-care boss. Now you can check out her episode on the replay. If you watch our show, you can check it out on the replay. But Dr. E talked about self-care and self-love and how important, doing that is. And she said, especially like if you're in a relationship and if you're dealing with a breakup, one of the things you really want to focus on is movement. She discussed the importance of body movement, whether through dance or through exercise, and just how important it is, especially when you're hurting or sad. And so if you want to know more about Dr. E, you can catch her on her YouTube channel, and it's titled by her name, Self Care Boss. And she also offers a Get Over Your Ex. Get Over Your Ex. It's a virtual class and it's a movement course, and you can find that on Eventbrite. So that is our mover and shaker for this episode, and we just want to salute the Self Care Boss. Thank you for expressing your gifts to the world and just making it a better place. So thank you, Elmira. So speaking of expressing your gifts and making the world a better place, this guest that we have on tonight is absolutely brilliant. When I say brilliant, I mean it. Today, we want to welcome another powerhouse contributor in this world, Dr. Leslie K. Best. Yes, Dr. Best is an educator. She's married with 3 children. She has a doctoral degree in education, a Master of Arts degree in administration and supervision, and a Bachelor of Science degree in early childhood education. Dr. Best also had the opportunity to study abroad at the University of Uppsala in Sweden. The way it's spelled and the way it's pronounced, I had to look that up, but it's Uppsala. And she may correct me when I get back on. I still may be saying it wrong. But that's in Sweden. She's received several awards and recognition, and she's also listed as an honoree of the International Who's Who Professional Business Women for her significant career achievements and contributions as an educator. She has appeared on radio talk shows, community cable stations, and other speaking engagement. Dr. Best always advocates for family and community empowerment. And when you meet her, you'll see why. She embodies that. She absolutely embodies that. But writing has always been her passion. Dr. Bess wrote her most recent book, Silhouettes of the Past, not only to share her personal experience in her memoir, but to inspire families and communities. Dr. Bess remains true through her writings to uphold her mission and passion to empower, to motivate, to inspire, and inform readers of all ages. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you, Dr. Leslie K. Best.
Hello,
Hey, Dr. Best, how are you?
I'm just wonderful.
Good.
I'm
You know
so
what? I'm
happy
going to take a
to
pause.
be
I'm
on
going
your
to take a
show.
pause real quick because I need some headphones. I want to make sure I hear every word you say and our acoustics in here. Let's do a test. Hey, Dr. Best.
Hi, Melissa. Thank you. Thank you. I'm looking forward to this
Mhm.
conversation.
I know. I think it's going to be wonderful. And I don't want to waste any time. I want to get straight into it. First of all, I want to talk about something that people don't know about you. Let's talk about your family being during the Great Migration coming into Chicago, because that's where to build that foundation. Let's talk about that because that's important for those who are watching to know.
Yes. Well, since my family migrated to Chicago in 1919, which is part of the Great Migration, and their attitude towards Chicago was a wonder. They had lots of respect and pride being a Chicagoan. So growing up, I heard lots of stories, positive stories about Chicago and their experiences, even though there were restrictive covenants and they lived in Bronzeville.
You know what? That's pretty interesting that you can say that because let's you said 1919, right?
Yes.
So what was going on in the world in 1919? Or you can even just focus because I know you're so you know so much about the world, so I know I can say world. But let's focus on because I think it's beautiful what you said about your family and they had great experiences because when we think of the struggles and the great migration, it's not you don't I haven't heard the positive thing. So that is beautiful. So let's talk about that. What was going on?
Well, see, that's one reason why I decided to write my books
Mhm.
from the influence of basically my mother. But in 1919, there was the race riot. It was the
Mm,
Red Summer. There were race riots all through the United States. And so in Chicago was no different.
mhm,
And
mhm,
what's interesting about Chicago's race riot is that not only was there conflict with the white community attacking the blacks, but the blacks also attacked the whites. They did not run from the whites. And all of this happened around 31st Street. It started at the
wow.
beach.
Wow. It's so funny. Like I'm telling you, Dr. Best, this is the type of stuff we never hear, about and we don't own the media, so the media can portray, anybody in any way they want. And people will buy it because it's mass. They do a mass mindset change or they do a mass mindset for people. So blacks that fought back. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I thought it was very intriguing. I was really happy because I really found it out through my research.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so it was really surprising and it was gratifying to know that not only whites attacked blacks, but like you said, blacks retaliated. So there were whites that died as well as blacks. The numbers were small.
Yeah.
It's still, they went to their community. All this happened like Bridgeport
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
Roswell.
If you're from Chicago, you know the area as well, Bridgeport and Bronzeville. But when you talk about race riots, it's like I'm of an age where I understand. You wrote the book, so you understand. But there are generations that may be watching that don't even know what a race riot is. So can you kind of break that definition down?
Well, usually there's conflict, there's some resentment. Now, in
Mm-hmm.
Chicago, the resentment was they had a restricted area. They did not want blacks to cross over to the white area.
Mm-hmm.
So they were on the beach and
Mm-hmm.
playing on the beach inside at the beach. And so a student's raft went over to the white side and they started throwing rocks. When they started throwing rocks, he fell over in the water and he drowned. Well,
Mm.
then that's when the fight came about. And the
Yeah.
race riot was between two races.
So that's so would you and I know it's not the same, but to kind of bring those race riots that happened then up to date now, and there are a lot of different dynamics that I understand when I say this, but Floyd, do is that similar to is it similar? I know it's not the same thing, but could you say that it's on the same spectrum as a race riot because of the things that happened after, George Floyd's death?
Well, that was more of a protest.
Okay.
That was a protest more
Mhm.
so than a race riot.
Okay. Now, what would be the difference?
Well, it was two races attacking each other. There
Hmm.
were no two races
Right.
attacking each other. There was that one incident,
Hmm.
and from there was a protest, and several races came together during this protest.
Hmm. So that's good. I don't I don't want to take for granted that people actually know. So that's why sometimes I ask those types of questions, uh, because they're trying to remove a lot of history in the education system now, and the only people that there may be left, are people like you to pass that history along and tell us. Now, tell me, Dr. Best, how many books have you written?
7 books.
Oh, wow. Seven books, you guys. And we're talking about books that are filled with such intensive research. She's traveled, she's done everything. One of the books I want to bring up, because it's Women's History Month, and we want to celebrate that. Let's talk about Annie Turnbow Pope Malone, which some people, this is the first time for them ever hearing that name. So let's talk about the book you wrote about her.
Well, initially, there was an exhibit at the DuSable Museum that honored Annie Malone. But like everyone else, my focus was on Madam C.J. Walker. And
Mm-hmm.
so I would see this portrait or this picture of her, and I would say, well, I didn't pay much attention because I said, Madam C.J. Walker was the first black millionaire because the female millionaire, because this is what we had always heard.
Right.
And then I had read books about Madam C.J. Walker, and Annie Malone was mentioned as her mentor. But
Mm.
after the Netflix episode, and they had Annie Malone following Madam C.J. Walker around, and
Right.
it just did not click right in my mind. So I decided to start researching Annie Malone. And I discovered that she was just a fantastic woman. And she is the one that started Madam C.J. Walker in the business of hair care. It was her product. Madam C.J. Walker took her product, Madam C.J. Walker took her program because Madam C.J. Walker was one of her agents. And she had agents that traveled all over the country.
That is the same concept, even when you watch the movie that like Madam C.J. Walker had. I mean, it's
but you saw in the movie she was working for her.
Right.
She had her product.
Right.
Put her name on her product. And so Amy Malone had not, she had not registered. This was early, like 1905.
Yeah.
So she had not, secured her product.
Mm-hmm.
And there were others that had stolen from her too. But she had a different demeanor than Madam C.J. Walker. She never sold in the stores. Never. She always let her agents sell because this was a way for them to make money. Because during that time, Black women didn't have job opportunities other than being a domestic.
Right.
And so that's what she did until she died in 1930. And she was born in Illinois, Metropolis, Illinois. I found that fascinating. And, I'm a lover of Chicago. And after she lost her money because her husband, like her second husband, married her for her money, for her wealth and her prestige in St. Louis, divorced her and sued her for all of her money, for most of her money. And she spent a lot of money for attorneys. So she lost quite a bit of her wealth, and she moved to Chicago, and she purchased an entire block on 44th. It was called Grand Boulevard, and then later it was called South Park, and now it's King Drive. But she continued. And she just has a fantastic story because she was very humble. She was very spiritual. And her mission was not to be famous. Her mission was not, everything she did was a spiritual experience for her. She wanted to help, and she continued doing it. And church, she was very connected to the churches, very connected to the community. Her story is very interesting. She did have a private pilot for a short while who had a pilot air control or air school training, pilot school on King Drive that was training pilots.
Wow.
Even Tuskegee Airmen.
Wow.
This same pilot, he trained the Tuskegee. He was considered the father of the Tuskegee Airmen. But you have to read my book because there's so much information. It's a lot of historical information, and it's also business for people that are in business and helping and teaching people how to overcome challenges. Because she kept her positive attitude, her spiritual attitude, all the way until she passed. And Madam C.J. Walker taught me a lot from her. And like in the Netflix, I didn't watch the Netflix. I didn't even have Netflix at the time. And I was hearing all these negative comments about Madam C.J., about Annie Malone. So I decided, well, let me look into Annie Malone. And I was just astonished.
It was inaccurate.
Yes, I went to different archives, newspaper archives, the Library of Congress. And it was just amazing. And I just hope more people will begin to recognize her.
That is so, like, I've never heard it. I knew that it was one of your books, but I had never heard of her, and I knew she was in the business industry. But we know about Madam C.J. Walker and what she did. But
she's at the Smithsonian now, and they've changed now. They've put more information about her than they had previously.
Wonderful. Wonderful. But yeah, we need to get your book on Annie Malone. That, and of course we know all your books are on Amazon, but that was definitely a treat. We haven't even gotten to the book that we're going to talk about yet, but that was definitely a treat for Women's History Month, especially women in business and things like that. So yeah, definitely purchase the book on Annie Malone by Dr. Leslie K. Best, and you can always find it on Amazon. Now, let's talk about you a little bit more. Okay. We know you have a love for Chicago. We know that you're an educator. But as an educator, you could go off in so many different avenues. What made you just hone down into history? What made you focus on Chicago? How did you navigate in that direction? I know you said your mom, but were there other things that inspired you to do the research? Because somebody can write a book on Annie Malone, but they won't do all the research that you've done. You've taken time out to do in your book to make sure that it's accurate and make sure it tells a story, a true story about her. So what inspired you to go in that direction?
Well, there's two reasons. One is my mother. My
Mm-hmm.
mother was a historian, and every opportunity that she had, she would give me an historical information. We could walk down the street and she'd see something and she could tell me something historical. But when I was teaching third grade
Mm-hmm.
at a magnet school,
Mm-hmm.
and the unit was on Chicago, so I decided that I was going to integrate Black history in the unit on Chicago because I never felt it should be isolated. Now, I always taught multicultural education, and I always taught multicultural students. But with this unit on Chicago, and I knew that Chicago had such a rich history because my mother had reiterated to me over and over again, I decided to do it. And when I integrated and they learned about specific individuals who had accomplished a lot for not only for Chicago, but for the country, the world. Dr. Lawless, if you ever heard of Lawless Gardens, Dr. Lawless lived in Bronzeville and he even helped to cure leprosy. And he
Wow.
was celebrities all over the world would come to his office in Bronzeville. He was a dermatologist. But anyway, so we had the unit, and so I included all of these African American people, and they were from Chicago. The children loved it. Some of the names they had heard, some of the places they were aware of, and it just brought everything to life. So when I saw how enthusiastic they were, and when I would take them to like the Chicago Museum, History Museum, and they
Mm-hmm.
would see pictures that would not even recognize, like John Jones, who was the first Black commissioner, Chicago commissioner. And they could see the picture on the wall, and people were just looking. They didn't even know he was Black because at that time they were very fair.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
anyway, so I decided to write the books. And my books aren't just the books on these different individuals, but
Mm-hmm.
also I integrated reading and writing because I know when you're engaged with something, you retain the information. So they were learning vocabulary skills. They were also learning, writing. There's writing activities and comprehension activities. So that's why I decided to write the books, the heritage books. It's the heritage of Black excellence in Chicago. Now,
Mm-hmm.
there was a Jewish woman, she told me to take Chicago off of it because these people are recognized all over the world, not just in Chicago. But I wanted to keep it as
Mm-hmm.
Chicago because I want that to be the focal point.
Yeah.
I don't want people to miss out that these people came to Chicago. They lived in Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
and
Right.
most of them lived in Bronzeville.
Mm-hmm.
So it was more than just poverty and deprivation. There were
That's right.
millionaires, there were entrepreneurs, they were people that created businesses. Baldwin ice cream. We have Parker House sausages. These were black people that were service. They were self-sustaining people,
Mm-hmm.
wealthy millionaires, professionals. You never hear about these people.
Right.
So that's why I wrote the heritage books. And I also
Mm-hmm.
have one on the pioneer inventors that
Mm-hmm.
had patents. They actually had patents. And you never hear about them as well. And in the book, I inform the reader how they themselves can have developed their ideas and apply patents. The whole process of getting a patent is in the book,
Mm-hmm.
along with the reading, vocabulary activities. So, and experiments. They have science
Mm-hmm.
experiments in those
My
books.
nephew has that book. I got that book from my nephew. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I'm really honored and humbled when I say you are just, a beautiful mind. Just this conversation, like I got chill bumps. This conversation is really enlightening because you know so much about the history, you know so much about worldly things, and it's just an honor to have you on the show. But another question I want to ask is, I'm from Chicago, but how did you get your love for Chicago? Now, where did that come from? I know you're born and raised, but everyone doesn't like the city that they're born and raised in. And then they don't like it enough to find the history and the golden nuggets about the people and the community. They will not do that. So how did this love of Chicago come about?
Well, it's the generation, like Harold Washington. Harold
Mm-hmm.
Washington was from Bronzeville. He went to the same school that my mother and my family went to. And that's the way they were brought up in that environment. I mentioned to my mother that some children were calling themselves ghetto. My
Mm-hmm.
mother said that was a word that they would never use when they were in Bronzeville, when they were restricted to that area. She said
Mm.
they had pride in themselves. She said the sociologists and all these people were trying to downgrade them. And she said that's when they came up with the name Bronzeville. They said because that represented their community.
Wow, that is beautiful. But
So
get
it was
uh-huh.
the mindset.
Okay, gotcha. The mindset. And that the mindset changes everything. But guess what? We haven't even started with silhouettes from the past, and we are at the first half of the top of the hour. So we're gonna go with some commercials, Dr. Best, and we will be back with more of Dr. Leslie K. Best. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
are back. And don't forget, you can catch any episode of Contemporary Living on the replay at e360.tv, Facebook, YouTube. And when you comment hashtag on the replay, you get a chance to win a bag of our Farm Hill medium roast coffee. And before we bring Dr. Bess back to the show, please like and share this episode and what Dr. Bess is talking about. This is some serious business, and we're learning so much from this brilliant educator. It really truly means a lot if you can like and share. And hey, if you want to come on the show, if you find this interesting, reach out to us. All you have to do is I just want you to put in, I want in. Just put in the message, type in the chat, I want in, and we will get back to you so you can be a part of our program. So let's bring Dr. Bess back to the show.
I lost the sound.
Can you hear now?
I lost the sound.
Can you hear now?
Yes.
Okay, so you're good?
Yes, right now.
It's so funny. You said I lost the sound, and guess what I was talking about, Dr. Bess? We're having some technical difficulties tonight, but we're powering right on through. It is all good. It is all good because we get to hear your research. We get to learn about your books. We get to hear about people that we never may have even heard of before. And we learned about your family. And what's most important, we learned about Chicago. We're learning about Chicago. So let's go to your book, Silhouettes of the Past, growing up in Chicago during the 1950s and 60s. Why was this book necessary?
Okay, it started because I never hear anything positive about Chicago. And my children, we were having a just historical discussion. And people just assume that life in Chicago was the same as it was in Mississippi and Alabama and Georgia and all those southern states. We did not have the same environment.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided, you weren't even able to go to the show, were you? We had movie theaters in every neighborhood.
Wow.
We could go to the movies every week. We had stage shows that we could go to. We could see the Motown Revue.
Wow.
We could see all the James Brown. We could see all Aretha Franklin. We could see all the top artists at the movie theaters. We could see a movie, and then after the movie, you see the stage show. And it would repeat 2 or 3 times each day. And primarily, I suppose it was just on the weekends, probably Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, because those were the days that I went. And I was allowed to go because I was still a child. But I could go to the movie theater by myself.
Oh,
and
wow.
I could go, and the price was so minimum, something like $2. And if you wanted to see the days that they had the stage shows, it probably went up something like $3.50. And then there weren't assigned seats. You could sit anywhere.
Right.
You remain in the theater. You didn't have to leave. You remained in the theater. You could stay and see more than one show. Normally, if there wasn't a stage show, there were 2 movies being shown. And so when there was a stage show, you only saw one movie and then the stage show. And then it would repeat a movie and the stage show. And the matinee was usually when the children went. And that was the one primarily, children would go, preteens, sometimes the teens. Sometimes the teens might be able to go with the older group. And basically, all the children would be in the matinees. So we had the Regal Theater, the famous Regal.
Yeah.
Now, everyone talks about the Apollo. Most people, especially if they were coming from Detroit or the Midwest,
Mm-hmm.
Mid South, they would come to Chicago. They would come to the Regal, which was on 47th Street,
Wow.
Brownsville. In my
Mm-hmm.
mother's era, in the early 20s, that's when they built the Regal Theater. It was the same thing for them. They had movies there, they had stage shows, just like it continued all the way up until the
Right.
end of the 60s. And so that was the number one song that Stevie Wonder recorded. He was 13 years old. It was his first record success, was called Fingertips. Have you ever heard of Fingertips?
I've I've heard of fingertips.
The
Is that
song.
what? Yeah, I seen the. Well, this is what's popping to mind when you say fingertips. I don't know if I heard the song on the radio. I probably would not. I might be familiar with it, but I would not know that it was that song, fingertips. Because, but when you say that, I remember seeing. I remember a black and white picture of Stevie Wonder. He was a young boy, and he had this harmonica. So that's what it reminds me of. So
That's what it was. And
okay,
it was
yeah,
recorded live at the Regal Theater.
yeah.
It was recorded live. And so everyone loved it. You could hear anywhere you went, you would hear the song because they didn't have air conditioners, right? So the
Mm-hmm.
doors would be open, the windows would be down, and you would hear
Mm-hmm.
Stevie Wonder playing the song Fingertips. And
Wow.
also Riverview. We had the
Mm-hmm.
amusement park.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's the name of the one that everyone goes to now?
Fun Town. Well, we used to go to when I was growing up. It was Fun Town.
One time, you know what? It was after the Riverview closed.
Okay.
Riverview closed like in the around 67.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay. The one in Gurney,
Great America.
Great America,
Mm-hmm.
it
Mm-hmm.
was equivalent to Great America at that time.
Oh wow.
And so it was at Belmont and Western. It was advertised as the largest amusement park in the Midwest. People from all over would come to Riverview.
Wow.
And so they had all these rides, they had all of the roller coasters, the bobs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so it had been there for around, started like in the 20s, all the way up to the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And so after they closed, because there was a white flight.
Right. Right. And I was gonna get to that. So now that we're there, because tell us about that. I was thinking about that. I'm so glad you mentioned it.
Okay. Well, that was one issue with Funtown. Some of the remnants of Riverview ended up at Funtown. Okay, so with the right flight, in my book about at the end, after the restricted covenant was resolved and blacks could move out of Brownsville, they started moving into Woodlawn.
Mm-hmm.
That had
Mm-hmm.
been all white. So you had, and they call it West Woodlawn. It was from Cottage Grove to King Drive. And so that's where the blacks were moving into. Whites
Okay.
moved out, blacks moved in. And they were considered pretty much the middle class group that were
Mm-hmm.
moving into that area. There were lawyers and professional teachers, professional people.
Mm-hmm.
Mahalia Jackson had her house was there,
Oh wow. Mm-hmm.
and there's a story behind that if you saw her story, but I
Mm-hmm.
won't go into that. But
Okay.
so anyway, so my family had moved in that area, and you couldn't move. You couldn't go if you were black. You couldn't go on the east side of Cottage Grove because there were barriers. So east side of Cottage Grove, from Cottage Grove to Stony Island,
Mm-hmm.
Lake Shore, all of that was white. And it was part of University of Chicago. University of Chicago was part of this restricted covenant. They did not want blacks to leave out of Brownsville. So, you know, Brownsville got so crowded and congested because all these people were
Right.
congregating. And then you had your professionals, and you had some that were, you know, worked in the fields, you know, the cotton fields and what sharecroppers. All those people were
Yeah.
that squeezed in that area. So
Mm-hmm.
finally they were able to branch out. The University of Chicago still did not allow people, they fought them from moving over to the east side of Woodlawn. So that's the
Wow.
story about Woodlawn.
Mm-hmm.
So it just continued.
Yeah. I was gonna ask you, what high school did you go to since we're repping Chicago? I
Well,
went to South Shore. What high school did you go to?
well, in the 60s, South Shore, blacks were not allowed in South Shore. South Shore was
Oh,
a
wow.
that was a white community. I went to Chicago Vocational CVS,
CVS.
and CVS was predominantly white.
Wow.
We had the principal was Jim Crow. They
Mm.
had just started. This was like in 61.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like 90 something white.
Wow.
We had a couple of school stores. Southeast Junior College was located there as well,
Mm-hmm.
which is now Olive Harvey.
Right, right.
That was Olive Harvey didn't exist. It was Southeast
Wow.
um, Junior College.
Mm-hmm.
But they would have race riots there, like at the end of the school year or just
Mm-hmm.
before a holiday.
Okay.
There would be police would be out in front of the school, and they would escort the black students onto the buses, and they would make sure CTA buses,
Yeah.
and they would make sure there would be no conflict. But periodically, there were some problems amongst the males. The girls didn't seem to phase them. They were so busy trying to find out more about us.
Right, right.
So
Right.
if you
What
ever
color lipstick you wear? How you wear your hair? What?
Well, they were teasing their hair. You seen the
Yeah.
movie Hairspray? So
Yeah.
they were spraying their hair with the hair. That's what they would do in between classes when when you're switching classes,
Wow.
and they would put up a big mirror on
Mm-hmm.
on their desks, like in the study hall,
Yeah.
and they had all kind of makeup and everything, and it was
Yeah.
much different from the environment that I was exposed to when I lived in Hyde Park.
Okay.
See, I had
Yeah.
left. I was attending a Catholic school in Hyde Park,
Mm-hmm.
elementary school, because we had lived. We were living in Hyde Park, and so then from there, I ended up in Chatham. We moved to Chatham, and there I went. They taught us. Well, there were recruiters. They recruited students from St. Thomas to attend CVS. CVS was a beautiful school. It was
Mm-hmm.
immaculately clean. It was new. It was
Wow.
a beaut. I mean, the floors like they were waxed,
Wow.
and the outside was landscaped beautifully.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's where I was at. But there were situations where blacks weren't accepted. In different organizations. There was
Yeah.
no black cheerleaders, and I think the only program you could get involved in was choir.
It just, I was gonna say, it just goes to show you how far. I mean, would you say we've advanced, or what would you say?
Well, that's what my son said. He said it doesn't seem like it's too much different.
But yeah, but what the way you depict it, Dr. Best, because when you think about it, how Hyde Park is different from the Chatham community in 2023. I mean,
No,
and
but
how.
Chatham was a beautiful area.
Uh-huh.
CVS was beautiful.
Mm.
CVS, that area was white.
Yeah, but
Oh, the social economic.
uh-huh.
You know
I'm
what I
listening.
saw the difference was, Melissa?
Where was it?
The whites at CVS were from working class white families
Mm-hmm.
that were affiliated with the steel mills and all these different industries.
Mm-hmm.
And they caught like greasers. You've seen those movies like with John Travolta,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
and the hair slicked and all.
Mm-hmm.
Those
Mm-hmm.
were the kind of white students that were there. Now the white students in Hyde Park, they were more on the intellectual level. So that was the difference. So when I went to the school, and then I was in a Catholic school, and so, but when I went there, I expected to see students being going to the study hall with books, kind of putting books on their desk and studying instead of doing, they were just a wild group of white students.
Wow.
And they show that in those different sitcoms, the older sitcoms.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the movie Grease, they were
yeah.
the Chevy car. That's what they did. They had the little Chevy cars. They would work on the Chevy cars. They would race the cars. So even Mary Nook, you're familiar with Mary Nook. That was white. All of that was white. So when we moved into Chatham, it was making a transition. And you couldn't go past Woodlawn, like there's the Illinois Central track. You couldn't go on the other side. So one day, my friend and I, a couple of my girlfriends, we walked over to the other side, and these guys came out with baseball bats.
Oh my goodness!
And
wow!
Get back! Called us all kind of names. And
yeah.
And so, get back there on the other side, because they wanted to keep those communities white. But
my husband is saying we've got 5 minutes. Can you believe it? But go ahead. No, go ahead. I'm listening. I want to hear that story. Finish.
We ended up over there anyway, didn't we?
Yeah, right. That's right. We absolutely did. Now I know you were talking about the greasers and things like that. Were there any like the white gangs? Would you consider them white gangs?
They had white gangs. And usually the white gangs in all the communities, they had white gangs, because that was like a norm, especially for the working class. And it was like a club. But usually they'd be like one neighborhood against another neighborhood, or it was like one ethnic group. It'd be the Irish against the Polish, and etc. And they had their own little sweaters and shirts and things that they would wear, and they had little club gatherings, and everyone recognized who they were.
Yeah.
So, but they basically just fought. It wasn't no shooting or killing like that.
Yeah.
And then when they left and went to the suburbs, it seemed to have ended.
Wow. So what is the best part about growing up in the 50s and 60s? What's the absolutely best part?
We had so much fun. I mean, like I said, we used to have the amusement park. You didn't have to drive. You could catch the bus, the L. We didn't have problems with people attacking us. We didn't have the shootings. You had to watch your back every minute. I mean, there was some communities might have been more dangerous than others, but if you lived in good areas, I wasn't a Panther. There weren't Panthers around me. Normally, they were middle-class areas that I lived in. And so it was just fun. You had herb camps, you had sock hops that we went to, we had dances that we went to.
Okay.
So it was a lot of fun activities. Just the one little incident. Oh, and then also, we had Ernie Banks. We had celebrities that lived in our communities that we would see every day.
Okay.
Because Black people lived together. They had to start branching out.
Right.
In certain areas.
Right.
So you would see Muhammad Ali. You would see him on a regular basis. You would see Ernie Banks. You would see some of the performers. You would see them all the time.
That is beautiful.
So, it was a close camaraderie.
Okay.
And like the parade, like the
Bud Billiken, or which one?
Now they focus on the school aspect, but it was like Mardi Gras.
Wow.
Because everybody went to Bud Billiken. It was an opportunity to see all the celebrities.
Yeah.
And business people. It wasn't just children. It was business. We had like Mississippi, we had queens, beauty queens.
Yeah.
People that owned their businesses. They were promoting their businesses. They were promoting their talents.
Yeah.
And so it was, as I said.
Man, we were proud.
And
And we
you,
were
yeah,
doing
you can see
it.
all these people, and and then there
Right.
was a party afterwards, and it was just a great time.
Yeah.
We'll get dressed up.
Yeah.
All the kids will have a different outfit for all these different
Oh
occasions.
my goodness. So I just want to let our viewers know that Dr. Bess can be found on Gmail at bexley'sbooks@gmail.com. All of her books. And don't forget, we talked about the Annie Malone book. We talked about Silhouettes of the Past, growing up in Chicago in the 1950s and 60s. Can be found on Amazon, you guys. She has 7 books. Wait, are you the only author in your family?
My mother was an author.
Okay. Yeah. All right. All right. And then you write children's. You've got I don't know why. Oh, your granddaughter was supporting you with your books. What is that not is that what happened? I remember seeing something with your I think it was your granddaughter
Well, she was
helping you
giving a
at
presentation because I have a book for teens.
okay.
Helps them, to set goals and aspirations. It's modified. It's the same as adults. How to
Yeah.
be successful, how to overcome adversities and bullying, and so that's why she
Yeah.
was presenting
Oh,
the book.
that is beautiful. I thought you were going to say she was practicing to be a writer too. Okay, Andre keeps giving me this cue. Dr. Bess, thank you for coming on the show. But in 30 seconds or less, what are some of the last words you'd like to leave with our audience?
Well, I hope that everyone enjoyed my experiences that I've had with talking about Chicago. I love Chicago.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I want people to recognize that Chicago was a great city.
Hmm.
People from all, it was a world class city. And if you watch
Absolutely.
older movies, you would see everyone ends up in Chicago because Chicago was the second city.
All right.
It
Yep.
was the second city next to New York, a Renaissance city.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. Definitely need to have you back because we've got more topics to choose from. But excellent interview by Benita Best. Hi, Benita Best. That last name sounds familiar. But yes, this was an excellent interview. Dr. Best, you are just simply amazing. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for asking me. Thank
All
you.
right. Have a good one.
You too.
All right, you guys, that was wonderful. And I know we've got to get ready to close out, but I want to leave you with a poem by Marianne Williamson to honor all women in recognition of Women's History Month. Let me pull it up here. And it goes like this. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. I'm going to repeat that. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Who am I? But actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightening about shrinking so that other people won't feel unsure around you. I will repeat that. There is nothing enlightening about shrinking so that other people won't feel unsure around you. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It is not just in some of us, it is in everyone. And we let our light shine and we consciously give others people permission to do the same. We are liberated from our own fear. Our presence automatically liberates others. Women, honor yourselves by not playing small this week and letting that light that God has placed inside of you shine. And as always, we thank God for his unmerited, undeserving favor, grace, mercy, and blessing that he gives to each and every one of us freely. And as believers, we know that he died, he was buried, and he rose again on the third day for our justification. And I encourage you to increase your confidence and faith in God through his word, prayer, and by being the living example of what he created you to be. On behalf of myself and my husband, Andre, the realtor. Be brilliant, be you, be blessed. See you in 2 weeks.